Well, my name is Mary Olson, and I own Airlie Winery and Dunforce Vineyard. And you're out here today looking at the vineyard and seeing the winery. I've owned it since 1997. I came out for harvest of 96, and I did the harvest with the previous owners, and they tell me that that was one of the worst harvests ever. They said, if you like this harvest, you're really going to like this job. And so I bought it in January of 97 and hired a winemaker and been on the road ever since with Airlie Wines.
So that that first experience, what was so supposedly so terrible about it, or
Cold, wet harvest. It started raining about the first week in October, and it really never quit. And so that now that I know a little bit more about the grape business, we're really like a dry October. And so we had to actually pick between the rain, or actually sometimes pick during the rain. Don't actually do the picking, but do all the pressing of the grapes and all the activity at the crush pad. So it was a cold, wet, dark harvest. But I still was really excited about it. 96, you might remember, in Oregon we had all the rain in the winter. 96 and 97, it actually prepared me for 97, because 97 was more of the same. But I've been here ever since and enjoy it very much.
so what did you do before you got into the wine business?
Well, I worked for the telephone company, and that's when there was the telephone company. I worked for U.S. West, and I started right out of college I grew up in Wisconsin, started in Minnesota, and right out of college, and was transferred from Arizona. I was transferred quite a bit during my career, and I was transferred from Arizona to Oregon, and fell in love with the state and the wine industry. And on weekends I'd go out to the wineries, and of course as soon as you fell in love with the place, they transferred you someplace else. And so I kept on telling my friends, in my next life I'll just buy a winery and move back to Oregon, and decided why wait. So in 97 I took the plunge.
Was when you reached that decision, was there a sort of a moment that came to mind or anything, or was there some kind of an aha moment or something that just struck you? Or
Well, actually, I'd been out on several vacations actually looking at various properties. I did quite well at the telephone company, but the better you do, at some point they might have a leader that doesn't exactly appreciate you as much as the previous leader did. And so my motto was always be prepared, and to take what the next step might be. And so in 97, or actually it was in 96, that I had the opportunity to kind of raise my hand and say, I'm ready to go now. So I left in 96, which allowed me to do the harvest, because I thought, well, that probably might be a good idea to at least go through one harvest before you make such a radical change. And so that's what happened.
did you do anything to prepare besides that, or had you been researching how to run a winery? Or
Well, I drank a lot of wine. that I don't know that I did a lot to prepare, and I don't know that I regret not doing a lot to prepare, because I think people can kind of scare themselves out of almost anything. What I was prepared to do is, if it didn't work, I was prepared to go back and do something else. And so, but I did know that I was not prepared to make wine, because I hadn't gone and taken any classes or anything to do that. So I hired a winemaker, and I grew up in farm country in Wisconsin, so I kind of knew a little bit about it. I could work my way around a John Deere and knew how to fix a few things, and which has come in very handy. But I didn't do a lot to prepare. When people talk about, I have my MBA and I know how to do a big business plan, but I did enough of a business plan to get the farm loan, but that was about it. And just decided to make the plunge and just follow my heart.
what was the hardest thing after that? Did you reach any moments where you thought, I don't know, this is just, it's not working out, or any big points of frustration along the way?
I would say that didn't really. The first couple years, my winemaker Susie Gagne and I were working so hard we didn't have time to think, because I owned another vineyard in addition. Because when I bought this, they also owned some property up in Dallas, and so I bought that property too. So between the two vineyards and Susie making the wine and trying to run the business, there really wasn't a lot of time to really think about what you were doing. You were just doing it all the time. And so I would say probably the biggest in the last 13 years was when my winemaker died of a brain aneurysm suddenly. That gave you real pause. But and so it was fairly lonely around here with just yourself and occasional help that you hired in. But it has all worked out great. I have a great new winemaker, and I still love it most every day. That there's a few times when something breaks or something just doesn't go quite right, that you wonder, what am I doing? But I pinch myself most every morning when I wake up here.
What are some of the things that you love most about it? Is there anything?
I like the diversity of it, because you kind of have to do it all. Because we actually do everything here at Airlie, from grow the grapes. We buy about 40% of our grapes as well. But we grow the grapes, make the wine. Elizabeth does most of the winemaking, Elizabeth Clark, my winemaker, but everybody has to help with everything to try to figure out what you're going to do with the label, figure out what you're going to do with your website. But the absolute thing that I like the most is the tasting room. And most of the other wineries, they look at me and they say, what do you mean you like the tasting room after all these years? But the greatest people come out to do wine tasting, and I've met fantastic people who are my friends. And so that I think of this is not just a stop along the way, it's a place to sit and stay. And so I have the same customers come out over and over and over again. Sometimes people think we're busy on weekends, and I keep on telling them that we're not that busy. These people refuse to leave. That's fun.
What about the winemaking process and kind of the vineyard management process? Are there certain points where that are sort of the highlights for you of the season or the year or the whole?
I think, well, it's always a highlight at harvest time. And I still have a great group of telephone company friends that come and help me every harvest. And so we work hard and eat hearty. We always assign one of us to the cooking detail. So I think it's always a highlight to see all the work that you've done in the vineyard come to fruition at harvest. So I would say that's probably the highlight. This year, we're hoping for a warm November because it's been a little cool this spring.
What varieties do you grow out in your vineyard? And
We have out in the vineyard here. We have 7 varieties of wine grapes, and actually 8 now, because in the new plantings that you see down here, we actually have planted a little Muscat Attenelle as well. But Pinot Noir, of course. We have Pinot Gris, Pinot Noir, Maréchal Foch, Riesling, Müller Thurgau, Gewürztraminer. Did I say Pinot Gris, Riesling? So it's quite a variety that we have here. And when I first bought this, we wondered whether or not we wanted all those varietals, but we actually like it. The winemaker enjoys making all the different wines, and it's fun to see the differences in the vineyards on the grapes.
do you have any favorites? You had to.
Pinot Noir. That's why we live here. So I always tell people when they come to the tasting room that they're all my children, so how can you ask me which one is my favorite? But I came from a family of 5, and we know that my mom likes me best. I like the Pinot Noir.
There are people that kind of obsess about wine and are very into it and invest a lot of time and money and study it and that sort of thing. And then of those very obsessive people, kind of the most obsessive people seem to focus on Pinot Noir. It seems to be the one that people are most passionate about. Why do you think that is?
I've often said in the tasting room that how boring to grow grapes in Australia. The weather's always the same, crop it up, whatever, and the wine's always going to be the same. With Pinot Noir, because it grows in the cooler climate of the Willamette Valley here, every year is going to be a bit different. In my 13 years, we've not had 2 that are even close to being the same. And so it is the most finicky of all grapes. But I think it's one of the best food wines around. And because it goes with so many of today's foods. And when you get Pinot right, there's just nothing like it. It is so fanciful that it's got so many nuances to it, and so we're always going for the best bottle of Pinot we could ever make, and I don't think you ever get there. I think that's the grand thing about Pinot Noir. It's just an endless journey.
What sort of pairing combinations, or do you have sort of a favorite kind of, if you're gonna get a chance to put together one meal and choose one of your favorite wine from the vineyard, what might that combination be?
Lamb. That I was always grateful growing up on a farm or around farms. I actually grew up in a small town, but all my uncles were dairy farmers, and I was always grateful that we never grew sheep because we always got to eat stuff after it was finished doing whatever it was going to do. So you ate the chickens after they wouldn't lay anymore, and you ate the cow after it couldn't milk anymore. And I never had lamb actually growing up so I didn't really have lamb until after I graduated from college. And lamb and Pinot Noir are just like a marriage made in heaven. The nice thing about Oregon is there's a lot of good wine and a lot of good winemakers.
So you're one of the folks that you had this idea that you go into a vineyard and you said, well, maybe I could do this. Maybe what gave you that confidence? Why did you think that you could be someone who could succeed doing something that you'd never done before?
I think I'd have to sum it up in passion. I think if you have passion about what you're doing, it gives you confidence. And it gives you a good feeling about what you're doing. So I would say, and I found that throughout my life, if you had passion about what you were doing, the rest comes along. And so I had a real passion to do it, and have loved it ever since.
What kind of advice might you give, something to watch out for if you had to do it over again and somebody else was starting from scratch? Is there something that you would say, oh, make sure you do this, or be careful, or something to watch out for? Or? I'm
more of a go for it person. That I think we live our lives fairly conservatively and don't reach enough. So I actually have encouraged quite a few people that are now in the industry to go for it. It does help if you have enough of a cash cushion, because wine is something that you don't grow it today, put it in the bottle tomorrow, and a truck drives up and gives you cash for it. I mean, so you do need to be able to finance it. But I think people should actually follow their dreams more and quit being so friggin' conservative. I think they should let her rip. As far as I know, we still only get one chance, okay, to live on this earth, and so go for it.
That is it part of that attitude you mentioned? Your winemaker Susie and good friend did you going through that experience, or did you learn something from her or take anything away from that experience?
Well, she died of a brain aneurysm, so she had no time. Okay. Neither of us had any time to prepare for it, nor her family or her husband. But Susie taught me to drink the good stuff first, and she was very happy with her. She was a car dealer in Vegas, okay, and got married to Colin, and they were making decent money, but Susie just kind of woke up one day and said, I'm going to UC Davis. I'm going to learn how to make wine, and I hope you're going to follow me, because that's what I'm going to do. And she did it, and I always think that's pretty exciting. And so even though she was only here for 46 years, she lived her life. She lived a good one, and so she did what she liked doing, and did it with all the gusto. So not a bad way to go out.
Well, I think the wrap up thing. There are a lot of folks who kind of shape their kind of wine experience to go for certain scores or that type of thing, or they really try and strategically grow things. How do you feel about that aspect of the whole kind of rating system and that sort of thing? The
best rating of all is yourself. that people come into the tasting room and they go, they look at our description of the wines and they say, "Huh, yeah, I can see where you got a pear out of that one, or a black raspberry, as an example." And they said, how did you train yourself to do all that?" And I said, "Well, whatever you say it with conviction." Everybody's taste buds are a little different. If you like it, it's good. And so I like to take a little of the pretension out of wine. It's always good to get a great score, and we've had our share. But the most important thing is that customers like it and enjoy it. And part of that is in your mind. That there's a reason why all of us like to have our wines at restaurants, because normally people are having a great time. And if your mind's having a great time, everything tastes better. And so I think one of the secrets here is when people come is, if I can make sure they're having a great time, our wines, although they taste great already, will even taste better. And so ratings are great, but the best thing is if you enjoy it, it's good.
You seem to kind of cultivate that family atmosphere here. Is that something, part of your business plan, or part of your personality, or just how you like to?
I don't think you can fake that, so it must be part of my personality. That I think we've all been to tasting rooms where the person behind the counter wasn't exactly the highlight of your day, and I might not be the highlight of everybody's day, but if I'm having fun, generally speaking, the customers are going to be having fun too. It's not a job for me; it's a life.